Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the death of Sonya Massey. First off, I just want to offer my condolences and prayers to the close friends and family of Sonya Massey. This was definitely, something very heinous. It was something that should have obviously been avoided, not should have been done. This was what appears to be a very reckless shooting on the part of Sean Grayson, and I do hope that he is prosecuted to the fullest on this, and faces the maximum penalty for what he did. Crimes should have strong repercussions for that, and I don't, after seeing the video, I think that there's no justification in what happened. So I want to talk about the chart of Sonya Massey. I'm going to talk about some natal placements and some transits that she had that may have been tied in with her death. But I'm going to talk a little bit about her, her life first. After looking at the chart, she obviously was somebody that was very religious. First, she had her moon in Sagittarius, and she's born with the sun in Aquarius. Sun in Aquarius, the basic, fundamental character. She likely was somebody that was very altruistic, selfless, considerate, unobtrusive, may have even had some ingenious qualities to her. And having that moon in the in Sagittarius, that right there, that can give that emotional need for religious matters, and I'm sure she was very spiritual as well. And the thing about her chart, I don't have, of course, I don't have her time of birth, so I had to improvise and do a solar sunrise chart in which I put the sun at the same spot as the ascendant in her chart. And the thing is, when I look at natally what she had, what was surprising but not really that surprising, is that she had a very dominant Sagittarius energy, and the moon, Mars, Saturn, Uranus, all in Sagittarius, and and they all, they all form a stellium based on the solar sunrise time. And it's interesting, the moon can be connected with the public, and then moon is followed by because when you look at a stellium, it can be broken down. It's broken down systematically. A stellium is a series of conjunctions in a natal chart. What starts out with the first planet culminates with the final one, and it basically forms an astrological statement. In this case, again, what starts out with the moon in Sagittarius, which is the public, and you look at, then followed by Mars, which is actions, has a connection with law enforcement. Then Saturn is authority, then followed by Uranus, which is something very unpredictable and unexpected. And being in Sagittarius, the sign of the law, and sadly also recklessness, foolhardiness. Sagittarius energy could be very audacious. So it's like she got something, something connected with the public, which is the moon, which was tied into, Mars, which is can be connected with law enforcement actions, violence, gunfire, followed by Saturn, which is authority, which can include police officers, and also followed by Uranus, which is completely unexpected and unpredictable in the sign of Sagittarius. And the thing about this is, it's like really that even with those natal placements in that conjunction, that the stellium that involve those four Sagittarius planets is very telling. And in the solar sunrise chart, two of those planets, Moon and Mars, fall in the 10th house of notoriety and recognition. And it's interesting because she had, in the solar sunrise chart, she also has Sagittarius on the 10th house cusp. it puts it in its Sagittarius being the sun sign of the shooter, Sean Grayson. Um, and obviously he figured prominently in her getting the notoriety and recognition, but sadly it was for something very negative that should have been avoided. And interestingly enough, his sun in Sagittarius opposes the fourth house cusp of the end of life and safety and security for Sonya Massey. And sun is connected with our actions, and the sun in Sagittarius can have the very reckless, self-righteous, foolhardy, actions. And some other things about Sonya Massey's chart, she also had Pluto in the solar sunrise chart in Scorpio in the ninth house of the law, so that could indicate a death that may have been tied in with law enforcement. And also another thing is that she had the Black Moon Lilith in Leo, close to that seventh house cusp, which can be connected with law enforcement. So, the Black Moon Lilith has a connection with death like Pluto. And the fact that this was something, Leo can be very dramatic energy. And it's also, Black Moon Lilith, Leo can also be arrogant. So it can reflect that, her death came due to somebody that was arrogant, that was connected in law enforcement. Again, the fact that this was not far from the seventh house cusp in her solar sunrise chart. And I noticed too that Pluto she has in Scorpio makes an opposition to her third house cusp of communications. So it just shows that her ability to communicate, sadly, was really far away, basically from when she passed away, when she got shot by the officer. And Taurus being on the cusp of that third house is very peaceful, communications, and she was not even able to really, communicate, sadly, to the officer. She was not really given that fair opportunity. So anyway, some other things to look at in terms of her her death in her chart. I noticed too that looking at the fourth house, the ruler, which is Mercury, falls in the 12th house in the solar sunrise chart. So that sadly can show the limitations that would be connected with the end of life. And also one of the rulers, she has Libra on the cusp of the 8th house, and it puts that could indicate a death that was associated with law enforcement. And the ruler Venus falls in the first house. In the first house, I would think, because the first house corresponds with Aries in astrology. It's gunfire, violence. So, that could suggest that the death could be tied into that. And also, too, Capricorn is on the cusp of the 12th house. And this is where, people in authority can be hidden adversaries. And also, the ruler Saturn falls in the 11th house. So it's the endings, an ending that was going to be, sadly, is being prominent on social media, because the 11th house has a connection with the internet and social media. So, and I notice, some of the synastry too, when I look at, the synastry between Sonya Massey and Sean Grayson, it's very compelling. And the thing about, this is some aspects I noticed that his Saturn, makes a conjunction to her sun. And that's, aspect of limiting, one's life, and, basically limiting the actions. Being an Aquarius, those are actions associated with freedom, with one's independence. And another thing with their synastry too is that his Mercury in Scorpio squares her Mercury in Aquarius. So when you have a square involving Mercury's in synastry, that is could be disastrous in terms of communication. Things being misconstrued, misunderstood between both people. The thing about it is his Mercury being in Scorpio, connected with power and control, making the square to her Mercury in freedom and independent Aquarius. And I think you could see where you had that energy that was very adversarial. The thing is, you look, another thing too is that his moon, likely in Gemini, conjoined her Chiron in Gemini, and that could be an indicator of the moon being the responses, the reactions were going to cause suffering for her. And Chiron falls in her fourth house of the end of life in the solar sunrise chart. And sadly, Gemini, energy, likely again his moon being in Gemini, showing graces depending on birth time, can be somewhat cold at times and callous and lack, just not seeing, an emotional or sensitive side of issues. Moon in Gemini can be emotionally versatile, but there's really can have lack of any really strong sustained feelings. Now, another thing too in the synastry is that his sun, well, I already stated this before, I can reiterate it though, his sun in Sagittarius making the opposition to her fourth house cusp. Again, those actions connected with Sagittarius. The sun is about our actions and being reckless, foolhardy actions opposing her at the end of life for her, the emotional safety and security. Police officers are supposed to protect and serve, and he was certainly not doing anything of that nature for her, sadly. And another thing too is that his moon in Gemini, was likely in Gemini depending on birth time, made an opposition to her Saturn. So it just shows the moon again being connected with responses and reactions, making the opposition to her Saturn in religious Sagittarius. Saturn is about what we have responsibility for. It can be what we concentrate on. And with her Saturn being in Sagittarius, strongly being able to concentrate on religious matters. And the thing is, in being at 29 degrees, she had Saturn in Sagittarius at 29 degrees, which is the full, culmination of the sign. So that could have played a role in her really, being very, where the religion was so accentuated and emphasized in her life. She had the Uranus in Sagittarius at 29 degrees as well, so that's where, Uranus in astrology can be connected with our goals and our aspirations, and with her that was strongly tied in with religious, her religious beliefs. Now, another thing too is that his Pluto in Scorpio made a square to her sun in Aquarius, and also squared her Mercury in Aquarius. The sun, Pluto, and sun, when you have the adverse aspect involved in synastry with the sun and Pluto, those are struggles, often power struggles, authority with ego. And the thing is, you have his Pluto again makes the square to her Mercury. So that's an indicator in synastry of too much, wanting to dominate and control what somebody else is trying to say. So, that's really, that's a very, telling aspect as far as their synastry goes, right there. So, just looking to see if there's anything else I wanted to get at. Sean Grayson's had his Black Moon Lilith in Aries. So, the black moon lilith in astrology can be connected with, that dark side, that side that we strongly want suppressed and we don't want unveiled or disclosed to others. The black moon lilith in Aries could have, very strong, volatile anger issues that, that one doesn't want, to come out. Basically, issues regarding, impulsiveness, you know, um, actions that are too quick and abrupt. There might have been a very, overly aggressive, forceful nature that's part of him that he just didn't want to come out. And remember that the black moon lilith is also connected with the very negative manifestation of the zodiac sign. So, black moon lilith in Aries, can actually, at times be exceptionally, truculent, overly outspoken, too aggressive, overly impulsive, in matters, and just being overly confrontational, just in general. So, anyways, really not much more for me to get into with this. The only other thing that I did, I noticed with a transit, that a couple transits that Sonya Massey had, transit Chiron in Aries at the time, when she was murdered, was not far from her Jupiter in Aries, and Jupiter, is paradoxical. I've spoken about this in previous videos, that Jupiter can be very, lucky and fortunate, but it could also have a tendency to enlarge and expand. And with the conjunction, or near conjunction, I should say, being in Aries, this enlarged, suffering, physical wounds connected, with violence, the head. And also transit Saturn at the time of her murder was not far from her natal North Node. And when you have, the North Node involved in transit, it can often suggest issues one may have to address and confront. When transit Saturn, not being far from the North Node in Pisces, can indicate, issues one may have to address and confront with authority that may be deceptive and duplicitous. And this is and this is just something when seeing this, watching that video, it's just very horrific to see something like this. Just a completely senseless shooting. It should not have transpired. And I don't know, what can be done to derail these kind of situations, and because, you could have a police officer go through, extensive training. They could pass all their tests. Hey, they could pass their tests with flying colors. They could pass a psychological test, and everything seems fine and dandy. And then when they get out on the field and they actually, they're on the police force and they're working, they could, their actions can contradict, how they scored on these tests. So, there has to be something that can be done to maybe, diminish these, these kind of events from taking place, sadly. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.